everyone, welcome to Murder Chronicles. Today, we look into the case of a man who was a father, a grandfather, and above all, a millionaire. Today, we delve into the story of Stephen Wangondu Kenini, a millionaire from Nyeri County who was filled with greed, took away his son's wife, and finally orchestrated on how to have the son murdered. This is the tragic murder case for Daniel Mwangi Wangondu. Stephen Wangondu had grown in wealth out of engaging in agricultural and business investments in Mwangi area, Nyeri County. He was well known for growing maize, beans and potatoes commercially. Though there were other individuals practicing farming and business in the same area, none of them could compare to Stephen Wangondu. He was worth millions of shillings. He owned a land as big as 100 acres where he had also expanded his agricultural activities in tea farming, bananas and fish keeping. On the side of business, he owned several businesses across Nyeri, such as restaurants, a gas station and rentals, both residential and commercial. He had several wholesaler shops, and finally he owned a quarry along the Nyeri-Nyahururu highway. Stephen Wangondu had a big family of 2 wives with 9 children in total, 6 sons and 3 daughters. He lost his first son, Emmanuel Toita, in the year 1995 after he mysteriously drowned in one of their dams. At this moment, Daniel was only 7 years old and the youngest of them all. Emmanuel was 18 years old then, a high school student at Yakanja Secondary School, Nyeri County. Daniel Mwangi Wangondu was born on 21st March 1988. He was his father's favorite. Many attested to that. After graduating from Nyahururu Highway Senior Academy back in the year 2005, Daniel joined United States International University, known as USIU, in the year 2006. He acquired a bachelor's in science in international business administration, mostly based on international marketing. He graduated in the year 2009. After graduating, Daniel maintained a close relationship with his dad. Daniel had chosen to stay with his dad, though his mom and dad had separated 2 years ago. Stephen placed Daniel as the senior manager at Tesco Services Station immediately after he graduated. Daniel did not fix himself in a comfort zone by only working for his father. He engaged in his own ventures such as farming, businesses, a gas station, and a nightclub called the Barcode along Nyeri-Nyahururu Highway. Daniel later met and married a woman, namely Frida Njeri. In 2015, they got their first child, a daughter, and in 2019, they were blessed with another daughter. He ensured that he maintained his responsibility to wife and children. He built his family a decent bungalow to live in. Towards the end of the year 2020, their marriage started to fall apart. On November 2020, the young couple was caught in a heated argument, and later, Daniel went to work, leaving Frida and the kids at home. The wife went ahead and informed the father-in-law about the fight. The old man asked Frida and her daughters to go stay with him. Meanwhile, he locked up Daniel's house and the gate as the family sought refuge with him. This experience led to the eruption of an argument between Daniel and his father. Their relationship got more strained, as well as that between Daniel and his wife Frida. Towards the end of December 2020, a bad fight happened between Daniel and Frida. Frida went to seek refuge at her father-in-law's house. From that moment, Stephen decided to build a house for Frida and also set up a business for her. The step led to a more serious fight between the father and the son. Daniel started telling his father that he had taken his wife away. He kept confronting him about it, Surprisingly, what happened was unbelievable. The old man threatened to kick his son out of his wealth and property if he kept pressuring the issue. 2 weeks away from the day of his death, Daniel was feeling infuriated. He went to Mwangi town at one of his father's gas stations. There, he found Frida and his father. He physically attacked the old man to an extent where bystanders had to restrain Daniel. The son was loudly screaming at his father, calling him a traitor who had stolen his wife away from him. He threatened that he was going to kill his dad and commit suicide since he could not withstand the betrayal. Stephen felt so embarrassed by his son for exposing his affair with his daughter-in-law to the public. He could not stand such belittlement, and so what came across in the old man's thought was to kill the son. Among his staff, Stephen had one close employee who had served him for almost a decade, James Mahinda. He was also his personal driver and a confidant. The old man approached Mahinda and requested him to support him in the plan for killing Daniel. Mahinda was promised a piece of land by Stephen as a token for gratitude. Stephen Wangondu told Mahinda that he would be paying 160,000 Kenyan shillings to the people who would manage to kill his son. Depending on the weight and the closeness of their relationship, Mahinda found it hard to object. He had fed from Stephen's table for years, and the old man had trusted him so much to an extent where he could even access some of his bank accounts. Mahinda being this close to the old man, sometimes even Stephen's children, Daniel included, had to go through Mahinda to access their father. Daniel found the situation quite unwell for him. He had fought Mahinda severally, questioning his motive for being this close to his father and his wealth. Out of this reason, Mahinda also felt like it could work on his favor to have Daniel eliminated to avoid such altercations. To have the orchestration process begin, Mahinda was given 20,000 Kenyan shillings by Stephen to start looking for hitmen. On the 29th December 2020, Mahinda hastened. He remembered an old friend from Embu, Geoffrey Warutumo, who ran a mirror selling business there. He called Geoffrey, asking him to help look for 3 strong men who would work at his boss's quarry to control and discipline stubborn and uncooperative workers. The request didn't make sense for Geoffrey, and so he somehow ignored the request. To his surprise, James Mahinda came to see him personally on December 30th, 2020. He persuaded Geoffrey, this time in person, and after some pleading, Geoffrey accepted. He contacted Eddie Karaoke, one of his regular customers, who had been looking for a job desperately. Eddie immediately reported at Geoffrey's place of work. There, he met Mahinda. After the two met, Mahinda revealed the true nature of the job. It was a killing mission about a father who wanted to eliminate his own son. To make Eddie fall into temptation easily, Mahinda told him that the salary was 100,000 Kenyan shillings after the mission was finished. Driven out of greed, he did not tell him the truth that, in fact, Stephen Wangondu Kenini had offered to pay 160,000 Kenyan shillings and not 100,000 Kenyan shillings. Mahinda wanted to keep the 60,000 Kenyan shillings to himself. What a greedy man! During these times, as Mahinda and Eddie planned for the killing, poor Geoffrey Warutumo was busy tending his customers, unaware that an innocent man was a few hours away from losing his life. Eddie agreed to the terms. He contacted a friend, Raphael Washira. Raphael would also fall into the plan so easily since he had been broke and desperate looking for a job. He got on board. On the New Year Eve, 31st December 2020, the two young men confirmed that they were ready to go through with the attack. Hours before heading for Nyeri, the two men, Eddie and Raphael, passed by at Geoffrey's place of work to thank him for connecting them with a job. Before the evening came, they had arrived at Nyeri. They met with Mahinda, shared a meal at a local restaurant. Later, Mahinda drove them to Muyogo Mwega and showed them where Daniel lived. At Muiga town, Mahinda from a distance pointed out their target, Daniel. The hitmen requested to have some gloves, mask, and a metal rod, the tools they would use for the attack. Mahinda bought them from a nearby agrovet and the metal rod from a hardware. Being satisfied with the plan so far, Mahinda left the two hitmen 500 Kenyan shillings to buy themselves dinner. Right from there, Mahinda went seeking his boss to update him about the progress so far. Stephen Wangondo was extremely pleased with their developments. He provided Mahinda with his Prado, asking him to keep it in order to use it for transporting the two hitmen once the mission goes successful. The old man was dropped off at his home in the early evening, where Mahinda drove back to Muiga town, waiting for Eddie and Raphael's call once they were done with the killing of Daniel Mwangi. As the final moments of the year drew near, Daniel embraced the festivities with an exuberance that belied the grim reality lurking beneath the surface. The night sky was adorned with vibrant explosions of color of fireworks painted the horizon, each burst echoing the jubilant laughter and cheers of those gathered to welcome the new year. Daniel, immersed in the euphoria of the celebration, danced with abandon, his heart light and his spirit unburdened. Little did he know, the very reverie that seems to illuminate his future was unknowingly casting shadows on his fate. In the midst of the merriment, Daniel's world sparkled with promise and hope. The clinking of glasses, the warmth of friendly embraces, and the infectious energy of the crowd created an atmosphere of unbridled joy. However, behind the scenes, a dark plot was unfolding, a carefully orchestrated scheme by someone he trusted implicitly. His father, driven by motives hidden in the murky depths of his own mind, had meticulously planned an outcome that would shatter the illusion of safety Daniel so innocently enjoyed. At around 1 a.m. in the morning, Daniel drove home to take some rest. He had just eased his car through the gate and parked it securely in the driveway when he stepped out into the cool evening air. Eddie and Raphael, hidden somewhere close in the bushes, were observing him. With a tired sigh, he turned back to the gate, intent on locking before heading inside. It was a routine he performed countless times without incident. But as he approached the gate, the night took a sinister turn. Eddie and Raphael emerged from the shadows like phantoms. Before Daniel could react, a brutal blow landed on his head, a metal bar striking with the force of unrestrained fury. The impact dazed him, and as he staggered, the assailants didn't relent. They plunged a knife into him repeatedly, their faces set with grim determination. Each stab was a vicious punctuation in the chaos, turning what should have been a simple task into a nightmarish ordeal. Daniel's world, once a sanctuary of familiar routines, was now a scene of unrelenting violence and terror. Mahinda's patience had worn thin. Hours of waiting for Eddie and Raphael had turned into a restless vigil. Frustrated and growing more anxious by the minute, he decided to drive away, leaving the night shrouded in uncertainty. As dawn's first light began to creep over the horizon, an unexpected call jolted him awake. The clock on his bedside table read 5 a.m. Eddie's voice, sharp with an unsettling calmness, came through the line, informing him in chilling details that Daniel was dead. The confirmation was aghast punch, a grim assurance that their horrific task had been completed. With a mix of dread and urgency, Mahinda rushed to Muiga town, where Eddie and Raphael had taken refuge. He found them hidden away in a small, unremarkable spot, their faces betraying no hint of remorse. He drove them to Kamatongo, a secluded hideout in Nyeri, shrouded in the pre-dawn fog. The journey was fraught with a palpable sense of dread, every passing moment like a countdown, each shadow a reminder of the dark deeds that had transpired. As they arrived at the new hideout, Mahinda's mind raced with the implication of the night's event, the weight of their action unsettling him. Mahinda left Kamatongo and made his way to Daniel's father's house, where a chilling transaction awaited him. As he arrived, the early light barely pierced through the heavy clouds of the night horror. The father greeted him with an unsettling calmness, his face betraying a twisted sense of relief. In the dimly lit room, Daniel's father handed over a thick envelope brimming with 160,000 Kenyan shillings. The cash was meant as a payment for the hitman, a grotesque token of the violence that had just transpired. What made the moment even more chilling was the father's reaction. Instead of sorrow or rage, there was a perverse joy in his eyes, an airy satisfaction that seemed to celebrate the brutal end of his own son. Money exchanged for murder, with the father's grin, pleasure marking the horrifying finality of it all. And at this moment, Daniel lay cold and dead, just a few meters away from his father's house, yet to be discovered by anyone. After Mahinda received the 160,000 Kenyan shillings from Daniel's father, the morning took a new, unsettling routine. He gathered the old man, Frida, and another unnamed woman into the Prado. Mahinda then drove Daniel's father and Frida to Mwega town at his gas station, a grim pilgrimage punctuated by the eerie silence that only deepened the discomfort. The anonymous woman was dropped off at the quarry owned by Daniel's father. With the passengers dispersed, Mahinda turned his focus to Eddie and Raphael's hideout. He drove them to Nyeri town, where the financial dealings continued. Despite the agreement for 160,000 shillings payment to the hitman, Mahinda handed over only 100,000 Kenyan shillings, pocketing the remaining 60,000 shillings for himself. The hitman in turn gave Mahinda 8,000 Kenyan shillings to pass on to Geoffrey Warutumo, the middleman who had introduced them. In a final act of greed, Mahinda reduced Geoffrey's share to 4,000 Kenyan shillings, keeping the rest of the money for himself. Each step of the green journey was marked with selfishness and avarice, weaving a tapestry of deceit and exploitation amidst the aftermath of violence. On the morning of January 1st, the first light of the new year revealed the grim discovery. Daniel was found dead by his car, slammed at the gate of his own home. The scene was both chilling and puzzling. His body bore the marks of a brutal attack, including numerous stabs, wounds, and a severe blow on the head from a heavy object. Despite the vicious nature of the assault, nothing seems to have been stolen. His phone, wallet, and even the car, usually prime targets for the thieves, were left untouched. The house itself remained locked, adding an eerie layer of mystery to the situation. Daniel's father's workers, who stumbled upon the grim scene, were immediately struck by the peculiar circumstances. The lack of theft combined with the locked house led to them to suspect that the murder was not a random act of burglary gone awry, but rather a targeted and deliberate killing. The strange and unsettling details painted a clear picture of a crime driven by something more sinister than simple theft. When Daniel's father arrived at the scene of his son's death, his reaction was unsettling as it was unexpected. To everyone's astonishment, he appeared disturbingly composed, showing no visible signs of grief or distress over the brutal loss of his child. Instead, he took immediate action with a chilling detachment, instructing his driver Mahinda to go pick Daniel's grandfather, Joachim Wambogo, from his home in Mbaringo, Kieni. Mahinda followed the directives, transporting the elderly man to Daniel's house. By the time Joachim arrived, Daniel's body had already been taken to the morgue at Nyeri General and Referral Hospital. The scene at Daniel's home was a stark contrast to the violence that had unfolded. The father sat quietly, accepting condolences from friends and neighbors who gathered to offer their sympathies. To them, he appeared as a grieving father, yet they remained oblivious to the dark truth that he was in fact the orchestrator behind the horrific act that had claimed his son's life. The news of Daniel's death quickly spread, causing a lot of concern and suspicion. As a result, his friends, family, and neighbors began calling for an investigation to find out what really happened and to seek justice for the young man who was remembered as kind, caring, and loving. The case soon caught the attention of the DCI Kenya. In the meantime, 5 days after his ferocious killing, Daniel was laid to rest on the 6th of January 2021 in Mwangi village in Mwangi. While Daniel's body was still fresh in the grave, his father began the process of claiming his life insurance money. This action, carried out so soon after his son's death, showed a disturbing lack of empathy and heartlessness. It seemed as if, even in grief, the father was more focused on the financial aspect than on the honoring his son's memory or mourning his loss. As Stephen Wangondu got busy into getting the life insurance money for Daniel, the police were busy trying to piece together the events that led to the death of Daniel, having it in their thoughts that Daniel was killed through a hired killing. They also involved the DCI in the process as they questioned friends, relatives, and neighbors. They would come to learn about the dispute that had been there between Wangondu and his son Daniel over Frida, Daniel's wife. This made the old man to become a suspect towards the death of Daniel. And for the two hitmen, they were busy enjoying their blood money, where Eddie built himself a two-bedroom house at home and Raphael bought some few household items. As the investigation into Daniel's killer reached a critical point, Mahinda became increasingly agitated and went into hiding, relocating from Mwangi to Githurai in Nairobi. While in hiding, he contacted Geoffrey Warutumo and warned him to advise Eddie and Raphael to turn off their phones and avoid discussing their involvement in the job. Mahinda's sudden disappearance raised suspicions, making him a prime suspect in the case. On the 20th February 2021, detectives managed to trace him from Githurai and he was arrested. Mahinda was arrested in Githurai, Kimbo. Under intense questioning by the police, he confessed and revealed details about his boss, Daniel's father, and the dispute between Daniel and Wangondu over Frida, Daniel's wife. Following his confession, Wangondu and Mahinda's wife Charity were arrested on February 21, 2021. Additionally, Charity was charged with aiding and abetting in the murder of Daniel. On the 22nd of February, Eddie, along with Geoffrey Warutumo, were arrested at Embu. Raphael managed to roam free for a few days, but was arrested on the 25th of February at Pipeline, Nairobi, where he had gone into hiding. Daniel's father sought release on bond, along with his personal driver Mahinda. However, residents of Mwangi who knew and loved Daniel protested against their release. They expressed concern about the possibility of these two individuals, whom they considered cold-blooded killers, returning to the community. They viewed them as a danger and felt they were unfit to be free among the people. People in the area expressed their strong disapproval of Daniel's father, citing his lack of regard for human values and his obsession with money. He had strained relationships with the locals, and some had long suspected him of being involved in dark practices.
Without 1 month imeenda chini, hatujaona mtu ameshikwa, but to hear the father participated in this, it really, to us, it's so painful to lose a friend. For me, he was a friend and a customer, and I feel, even today, I feel the loss of Mwangi in my life.
Their animosity towards him grew even stronger when it was revealed that he was implicated into the murder of his own son, who had been beloved by the community.
When it was reported that wameshika waliohusika na kifo cha Mwangi, tunataka kushukuru Mungu na kuwashukuru, and kesho wanaoenda wanarudishwa kule kotini, and all we can say ni justice be served.
Tomorrow we are appealing to the government and to the judiciary not to grant him bail, because when he is granted that bail, he will be a threat to the community, and our security will be threatened.
The 6 suspects, including Eddie, Raphael Mahinda, Daniel's father Charity, and Geoffrey Warutumo, were arraigned in court on the 26th February 2021. The judge ruled that they would remain in custody for 5 more days to allow the DCI complete the investigation and gather all evidence. But later, Charity was released and the detectives proved her innocence, though her phone had been used by Mahinda to contact Geoffrey Warutumo. The woman was not aware of the plan cooking behind the curtains, and she was not involved in the orchestration or execution of the murder. Detectives started investigating the insurance policies taken out by Stephen Wangondu. They would discover that he had taken out life insurance policies on family members, relatives, friends, and some employees too, where he paid the premiums himself. Mahinda also confessed that days after Daniel's death, he had driven Stephen Wangondu to the insurance office, where the man submitted a claim for his son's life insurance payout. Further investigations showed that Daniel's father had been struggling to keep the businesses running since 2019. They would learn that 2 of his Mwangi properties had been auctioned off in May 2020. This raised concern over his first son's death, Emmanuel, and the nature of his death. They would uncover that after Emmanuel died as a result of drowning, and of course in a mysterious way, the father received a substantial amount of money from the insurance company. He opened up a gas station in Mwangi, naming it Emmanuel Mwangi Services Station in his late son's honor. This was a sign that it was not the first time Stephen Wangondu had planned for his children's death for financial gain. A conclusion was further made that, besides the dispute over Daniel's wife, the old man had the plan to benefit from Daniel's life insurance payout after he was dead. For the 2 hitmen, cell phone data had placed their location at the crime scene during the time when Daniel was killed. This made the case quite conclusive, and with no doubt, the suspects were being faced with murder charges. But believe it or not, the case took a dramatic turn when Daniel's father did not live to see its conclusion. On May 7, 2021, he passed away after contracting COVID-19.
And a 74-year-old Nyeri businessman accused of killing his son in January this year has died. His family confirmed that the 74-year-old murder suspect passed away at the Outspan Hospital in Nyeri, where he had been admitted days after securing release from custody on a 1 million shilling bond.
Throughout the legal proceedings, he had been in poor health, frequently requiring hospitalization. He had long struggled with diabetes and hypertension, and his condition worsened over time. Initially admitted to Nyeri County General and Referral Hospital, his health continued to deteriorate, leading to his transfer to Outspan Hospital, on the 5th of May 2021, where he ultimately succumbed to the virus. He was buried a week later in a private ceremony, only 5 months after he had killed his son, with the thought of having many more days on earth. Mahinda, with his boss now dead, he agreed to take a plea deal and testify against Eddie and Raphael. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison and a 1-year probation. For Geoffrey Warutumo, he also became a state witness against Eddie and Raphael. He received no charges at all since the detectives were able to determine that he was not even aware the type of job Mahinda had offered Eddie and Raphael. He was not involved in the planning and execution of the killing of Daniel. But on Thursday, 28, 2021, the two hitmen made the case easier. Warutumo and Mahinda did not testify against them since they pleaded guilty of the charges. Out of their agreement to sign the plea, the execution team withdrew death sentences for the hitmen. Their sentencing happened on 20th of June 2021. Eddie Kariuki received a 25 years jail time, while Raphael Washira received a 30 years jail time. The presiding judge explained why Eddie received a much less sentence. Eddie did express a lot of remorse during the prosecution process, unlike Raphael Washira, who appeared cool and with no remorse for the brutal killing of Daniel Mwangi Wangondu. And for the young champion, may he continue resting in peace. He is loved and missed a lot.